want to thank everybody who's been with me, my Xbox clan.
When Kobe's going back to play Madison Square Garden, and he's like, hey, hook me up with dinner with Heath Ledger.
Like Russell Westbrook, that was a great feat the other day. I couldn't even tweet it out.
It's Coach Frank Vogel here, full of enthusiasm and positive energy.
Well, first of all, you don't smoke peyote.
And there was a couple games where I was at a hookah lounge. That's the truth. I wasn't smoking hookah, but I was there.
There was a time when the Israelites were wandering in the desert and all of a sudden bread came down from heaven. That's kind of what today feels like to have KCP join.
Welcome back to Bulls vs. Blazers. You can find us, as always, on Apple, Spotify, Google, YouTube, anywhere else you can find podcasts. Make sure you subscribe, give us a review, all the other stuff you're supposed to do with podcasts. You can subscribe to us on Patreon for an extra episode a week at patreon.com/BullsVBlazers. Shout out to the family. Shout out to the Patreon subscribers. I'm Sean Highkin. With me, as always, Erik Gundersen. I think it's time for a little vibe check. We haven't done a vibe check in a while. So how, like, the vibes around the league, it's kind of a chaotic season. I don't know if it's in a good way or a bad way, but how are you feeling right now?
You know, I feel okay about it, honestly. Overall, I do feel like what the league has been doing to stop play hasn't been, I mean, with the Wizards, that was like a real outbreak. But I think for the most part, they haven't had many outbreaks. And when, for instance, they took Memphis out of rotation last week, that was because only one person tested positive, but there was contact tracing, so they were worried about it. So,
they just announced today that there was only one positive test in the last week. And this is after there were 16 2 weeks ago and 11 last week, and now there's only one. And I think, who knows if that's going to hold, because a few weeks ago there were 0, and then obviously then there's been this explosion of them. But I think the league had been telling teams privately, and this is just based on, what I've heard, that they all kind of knew that after the holidays and after everybody had traveled for the holidays, and we're kind of seeing this around the country just at large, that there was going to be a huge spike in January. And then after that, it was going to level off a little bit. And it seems like we're starting to see that. Hopefully it holds, but it's definitely making it feel like, I actually was having a conversation about this with somebody earlier tonight. I just consider this a fake season. There's nothing about this that I'm you can even look at and say, oh, this is real. We know that the 2 LA teams and the Jazz and the Sixers are good. And we know that Detroit and Minnesota are bad. And that's it.
Yeah, but I mean, that's kind of the same. I don't know how fake this season is. I think the playing field is leveled for everybody. Do think that, yes, it is weird, but I do think that weirdness takes a toll on every team in the league. And I don't necessarily think, it hasn't been an incredibly good season. And, I think part of it also too is just the fact that fans aren't in the stands. Could you imagine tonight's Philly Lakers game if there had been a crowd in Philly when Tobias Harris hits the game winner, or even earlier in the game when LeBron gets called for a flagrant against Joel Embiid, then Embiid gets a flagrant back? You could just see and imagine what that could have been like in Philly, but we had to be just watching it on TV and giving our own reactions.
Or even something earlier in the season, like Steph's 62-point game. If that had actually been in San Francisco at the Chase Center with fans, how different that would have been.
Yeah, it's a completely different moment. Even the game that you talked about that, was the game of the year for you, when Harden showed up, out of shape and had 44 and 17, and CJ hits a game winner. That game would have been so much better with a crowd there in Portland, with a great crowd, and how tight that would have been and how much more weight that moment would probably carry. And it just, tonight, Tobias Harris had a great moment on top of what has been a great season for him so far, a career season. And, as a guy that I've slandered many times on this podcast, I will once again give my props to him. And this would have been a great moment for him to have in front of the Philly fans. And again, it just I think that is really the thing that we all won't talk about because it's the right thing to do to not have fans. But I do think we don't talk about it enough as to how subduing not having those fans does to the game, like not just for the players, but also for the audience at home.
I was watching the Warriors-Wolves game tonight. That was the late ESPN game.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I haven't watched too many Warriors home games, like in enough depth to be noticing what was going on in the arena. But the Warriors have the digital fan board like they had in the bubble. I think they're either the only team or one of the only teams in the league that does that.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoyed it. Like, I thought it was weird when they did it in the bubble, and I didn't really like it that much. But now that, we've had a month of the season being played as it is in these giant arenas with no fans, and it just feels weird, and you and I have gone to a couple of games in that capacity, seeing something that reminds me of the bubble, which was so good, and the basketball was so good, and everything about it was so cool on every level, that seeing something like that actually made it a little bit cooler for me, even though it was something I hated when they did it in the bubble over the summer.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, I definitely hear you. And the league is trying their best. I think the teams are trying their best to create atmosphere and create a feeling. But, I
almost wish they would go the other way and just not have piped in crowd noise and just let the sounds of the game.
The piped in crowd noise is pretty annoying, honestly.
I don't like it. And also, I wish I could remember who this was that made this point on Twitter a couple weeks ago when there was the outbreak around the league starting. But if we get rid of some of these extraneous piped in artificial noises, maybe the coaches don't have to pull their masks down to yell at the refs or to talk to their team during the game.
Yeah, that's
just another point of a point of possible like transmission of this virus.
Yeah, and I do think obviously another thing that we're not talking about is like the people who are creating the piped or who are pumping in the piped in crowd noise are workers and people that have jobs and people that would not have those jobs if they were not piping in fake crowd noise. So I get where these teams are coming from doing what they're doing because it keeps people employed. But I don't think I think there are attempts to try to add normalcy to a situation that's just inherently never going to be normal is just kind of a misallocation of like maybe what they should be doing and trying to focus on in this weird season. And they could sell a lot of different aspects of the game that, like you said, they could go all the way with it and have the crowd noise or have the player noise and hear everything. And, that would be an aspect that I think would interest viewers and maybe would interest the casual fan maybe even more to be like, oh yeah, wow, this is actually like almost like going to a game where you can just hear everything on your TV. But I think it's very clear the league is not going to go that way. As much as we'd like them to go that way. I just don't see it.
I don't either. You know who's really not having a good time right now is Bradley Beal.
Yes.
Did you see the pictures? There was the one the other night where he's like praying on the bench, and then there was another screenshot tonight. I don't know if you saw the one tonight. Of him,
where he's just like laid back and just like exhausted and tired and just looks over it. 3-11 Washington Wizards tonight, third straight loss after they were on the shelf for basically 2 weeks. And he's, Beal's again having a monster season. He had 47 tonight, and
there are some wild stats that they showed.
we are doing the vibe check right now, and Washington is the worst vibes in the league right now by far. Even though it
is his 10th straight loss. This is from ESPN Stats and Info. This is Bradley Beal's 10th straight loss when recording at least 40 points. He is the first player in NBA history to lose 10 straight games where he scores 40 points.
That's so bad. That's like stuff that you would hear about back in like the 70s and 80s, right? When guys would be on bad teams and they would score all these points, and it just feels like he's in one of those spots, like almost like, I guess, like maybe someone like back in the day was like Earl Monroe before he got on the Knicks. Like, you're just like a guy that was just getting stats and then eventually ended up on a team to win a championship. And
this is what people think Kobe's 06 season was. And I would argue that Lakers team was better than this Wizards team.
Oh, bro, yeah. Don't even. I mean, this is not that like putting. The Kobe definitely did more for the Lakers that year than what, and Brad Beal's team honestly was like, they weren't that. I mean, they're not that much better, you know.
I'm saying that Lakers team that Kobe was on was better than this Wizards team.
I do think that that Kobe, excuse me, did a Beal level amount of work though to get them to that level, like, and maybe more. You know, I mean, they didn't have that great of a team. I mean, they had Lamar Odom, and that was kind of it.
It's like Chris Mim and Smush Parker.
And Smush Parker. Like, you look at the Wizards, whoever the guys they have on that team, they're not great, but I mean, Russell Westbrook is on the team, and that's the way better than any teammate that Kobe had that year. And they're still
Kobe never got to play with JJ Hickson. It's true.
This is
so
Bro.
here's a bunch of quotes from. Did you see any of Beal's?
No, I wanted to talk about wild stats. Last night, this is after the Wizards game the other night, but
okay,
that Westbrook had as many made field had.
I saw this.
Took as many shots as he had points.
That's like Michael
130.
Beasley.
Yeah, 136 field goal attempts and 136 points. That is his mark right now.
Outstanding. Did you see any of Beal's quotes tonight?
I mean, yeah, just like same shit, different day, like whatever.
Well, so I've got a bunch of these, and these are all from my homie and yours. I don't know how much of homies you are with him, but Fred Katz from The Athletic is one of my homies. I like.
Yeah. Fred Katz is the homie, of course. A legend. We hung out in Vegas many a time.
Well, Fred and I go back like 10 years or something. So like that's one of my OGs in the business.
Of course.
But so
there you go.
And he's the Wizards beat writer for The Athletic, and so he tweeted all these quotes. So I'm going to read these.
Mm-hmm.
Bradley Beal on getting memed with sad faces after seemingly every game. I got to be better with that. You guys, media is going to blow everything up. Rightfully so. I'm mad about losing. If I'm sitting there laughing and smiling, what's the media going to say then?
True.
Reporter, are you frustrated? Bradley Beal, is the sky blue?
Damn.
And then this is a tweet from Fred that says, here's the single most important Beal quote. Amidst all the trade talk, he says, it's tough. We want to win. I want to win. This is why I stayed. I want to win here. I figured this is the place where I can get it done.
Mm-hmm.
And then on how to find a solution to the team. I swear, if I had that answer, I think I would be a genius. I think if we all had that answer, we'd all be blurting it out right now, but I don't have that answer.
Man. This is I mean I feel bad for the guy. I mean he's giving it his all. He's scoring as many points as he can. They are terrible. And I don't see anywhere for this to go because they made their move. They traded John Wall. They who they thought was like a guy that was ruining their team, et cetera, et cetera. And now they have
and
Westbrook.
He's looked pretty good when he's been healthy this year for the Rockets.
Absolutely. And we've already talked about this. We were pro John Wall to the Rockets already. Like we liked this trade for Houston. We were like maybe the only people that liked the trade for Houston from the jump. And Westbrook has proven us right in enormous ways.
Well, I thought Russ was going to. My take at the time was that this was going to be a good trade for both teams because I think I just assumed that how bad Russ was in the bubble was more a product of him having COVID and him, having that calf injury that he had to come back from. And I was thinking he was going to be closer to what he was right before the season shut down last March, where he was playing maybe the best basketball of his entire career. Mm-hmm. And so I did not expect Russ to become guard JJ Hickson.
No, I don't think any of us were. And like, that is a major bummer, but it just is what
Memphis Allen Iverson. That's what Russ is right now.
It's really Orlando Gilbert Arenas. Like,
oh my God.
It is getting really dark right now. Like Stephon Marbury on the Knicks. This is, we're naming all the different ways that this is, all the like awful iconic ways that this season has gone for Westbrook, but like it really has been that bad. And I mean, if I'm Brooklyn, like, I do not want it. Like, I know we joked around with it, like, let's do OKC part 2, but like, if I'm Brooklyn, there's absolutely no way I'm going to do that.
No, absolutely not. I just feel bad for Beal because, like, it's cool that he was trying to, he wanted to stay and he wanted to give this new management a chance to, do right by him. But like, we talked about him wanting to do the Dame thing, wanting to do the Giannis thing, but I feel like this is a little bit of a different situation because nobody would argue that the Wizards have done a good job in build. And I know they've had some bad luck with Wall getting injured, but they also like have made a bunch of, like, they did the Jan Mahimi contract. They made some other moves where you're just like thought they were kind of weird or whatever. But like, whatever you want to say about Dame, like, maybe this Blazers group is never going to win a title, and they probably aren't in their current group, but they've been in the playoffs every year. They've gotten out of the first round multiple times. This Giannis signs this extension. This Bucks roster is still, I think, flawed, but they've had the best record in the East the last 2 years. They made the conference finals 2 years ago. Like, those teams have, for the most part, every move that they've made, Portland and Milwaukee, around their superstar once they committed to stay long term, hasn't been perfect, but they've at least been competitive every year. Whereas I feel like Beal signed this extension because he wanted to, build that, that type of, one team legacy. But then what the Wizards have done around him is just, they've been consistent. Like, they had those couple of years, like 5 years ago, where they were in the playoffs, but they still have never made the conference finals. They have been terrible for like 3 or 4 years in a row. And again, I know some of that is a John Wall injury, but their rosters also just haven't been that good. And they have now that they did this Russ trade, like, they have no path to getting better while that money is still on the books. And I don't think that he's going to ask for a trade during the season because I don't think he wants to be a distraction. But I also don't think that he's going to be on the Wizards on opening night of the 21-22 season.
Yeah, I mean, they also just, like, a lot of the guys that they're betting on are frankly not in
Rui.
Well, they're not in Beal's age group. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Rui, Denny.
It's kind of like, imagine if the Blazers built around Dame and never had CJ. Or
like, if they were like built around Dame and they're like, okay, well, our three best players are the three guys we're building around are Damian Lillard, Nasir Little, and Anthony Simons.
Yeah, it's like they have Rui and Denny, the guy that they drafted this year, and they're obviously they took a flyer on all those guys that the Lakers drafted, and really none of those guys have really panned out that much. Like, Mo Wagner had like a pretty good 3-point shooting season last year, but it was like not really much. And then Thomas Bryant is a really good offensive player, but not a good defensive player. And then he had the unfortunate injury this season. So they're just, I don't know. They just, yeah, exactly. It's the same thing you're saying. It's like, imagine if those were the best players around Damian Lillard were like just a couple of late first round picks that these guys have had, and they haven't been late. Like in the case of Rui,
or if the Bucks was like Giannis, White Dante, and like DJ Wilson.
Yes, exactly. It's like if they didn't do anything else other than just draft. Yeah, and the free agent signings haven't panned out. Unfortunately, the Robin Lopez thing is not working. And maybe it's
that's who Brooklyn needs to go get.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he's a buyout.
He'd be
guy.
Perfect for them.
Yeah, that he would be a guy that boxes out, lets KD sky for the rebound when he needs to, and I think Harden also can be a better rebounder. I mean, he is a good rebounder. I mean, he comes close to averaging a triple-double a lot of the time, so he can get you 8 to 10 rebounds on any given night. I don't think that's crazy. So,
what's your vibe check on Brooklyn right now?
I'm going to be, I mean, I like the vibes. What's not to like? They've won 3 straight. I mean, those 2 losses in Cleveland were brutal, but the Cavs are a scrappy team. They pushed LeBron and the Lakers to in a really tough game that they needed, a major rally towards the end of the game to complete. That was, I mean, I think the Cavs are a good team at home, and one of those was without KD, but they did a good job against Miami, and they did a good job tonight against Atlanta. They took care of business. The 3 guys seem to really play incredibly well offensively together. There's really no, I don't see any issues with the fit. You know what I mean? I think on paper you could think that there would have been, but I think they're all good enough at shooting, all good enough at playmaking and frankly, all good enough at being able to finish too. Like they can, all three of those guys can score at all three levels, and they can all just kind of alternate between where they are at any given time. And they're doing it. I mean, obviously they have weaknesses still, but I mean, against a team, the Heat are super shorthanded right now. The Hawks aren't very good. I mean, the Hawks are playing better, but they're still not a good defensive team and not going to.
That's a W for you.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be. I mean, they've been playing better though. Like, I mean, after I was shitting on them, like for being bad, I mean, they're just going to be. They're going to be in like that play-in zone, but I don't see. They're not better than Cleveland, and I think Charlotte has struggled lately. But
they're going to struggle. They cannot prosper until they start LaMelo.
Because they're doing themselves and LaMelo a disservice, and I don't understand the way. I don't like their vibes. I think at some point Borrego's got to have to have the come to Jesus moment, that whether it's Devontae Graham or Terry Rozier, who both can have great scoring quarters from time to time, like the better player out of all of the guards that they have is LaMelo. It's just not even close to me. And the longer they wait, I think the more it's just they're prolonging the inevitable is all they're doing. They're not doing themselves anything good by holding it back.
They're going to just make it more awkward, because I feel like the longer this goes on, we're already starting to see. We saw LeVar a week ago or something, said like, why are they treating my boys like role players? They're all superstars. The longer this goes on, the more LeVar is going to be getting on these TV shows or getting on whatever interviews he's doing and talking like, you saw how he did Luke Walton. They're going to do the same thing to James Borrego, and I think James Borrego is a better coach than that. And I hope that he sees what he needs to do and does the right thing before the big baller mafia takes care of it.
I mean, yeah, and I also just think like the big baller mafia in this case is in the right. Like this is, I can understand not wanting to like look like you're being bullied by LeVar Ball as an organization. You don't want to have that be the look, but the longer it shouldn't be about trying to look good in a potential, confrontational, battle with LeVar. Like that can't be the guiding concern for your basketball team. Your guiding concern should be what's best for the team, and what's best for the team is for LaMelo to start. And he makes mistakes. He's going to make turnovers. You gotta let him play through it, because for the turnovers that he has, he does things that nobody else on that team can do. And I love the chemistry that he has with Miles Bridges off the bench, and that's great. But like, why wouldn't you give him a chance to form that chemistry with players that that the coaches think are better than Miles Bridges, like PJ Washington, like Hayward Moore, like some of the more of Cody Zeller and LaMelo? Like it just feels like there needs to be just a passing of the torch here, and it's clear as day. Everyone does it, and like the team's marketing knows it. Like it just seems like Borrego is like the only one that doesn't want to let it happen, and I don't know why.
This is the first time any player on the Charlotte Hornets has been like marketable to the casual NBA fan since like Baron Davis. Am I like? No. Unless you want to count like that one year that Gerald Wallace was an all-star, but like he's more of like a marketing draw than Kemba ever was there.
Yeah, in Charlotte there hasn't been a guy like Baron Davis like since Baron Davis, like really. And I think Kemba, I guess, but I still think Baron Davis in his heyday was bigger than Kemba. Yeah. And like the way that LaMelo does things and the highlights he has and the passes he has and the moments that he has, and he just also just has an energy. Like guys gravitate to him, guys want to play with him, and it's very clear. And I don't understand why. And listen, it has been Borrego's show for the last couple of years. He's the one who gets the praise for when they play well, and he's the guy that put Devontae Graham in a position to be, the guy that he was last season, and a lot of people love him. He gets mentioned by Kevin Arnovitz on podcasts and what have you, but it's not going to like that can't play into his ego in like he can't look at this like this is James Borrego versus LeVar Ball. Like he can't do that. Like he just has to be like, this is the best thing for our team, and he needs to put his ego aside.
The Devil Raptors have started to turn it around. I know they lost to Milwaukee tonight, but they've started to look better than they did at the beginning of the season.
I thought even that week when they came through to Golden State and they played in Portland, I thought that Siakam was turning a corner then. And he had the
groin injury last week against Miami, so that was a little bit of a setback. But he's been pretty good since that first couple weeks of the season when he was awful.
Yeah, and I think that put just everything into place. And I also think that the Raptors also just said, like, fuck this, traditional center shit. We don't have Marc Gasol anymore. We don't have Serge Ibaka anymore. Like, let's stop pretending like we are that same team. And they were going smaller at center, playing more Boucher, playing more Stanley Johnson, all these guys. And they've been finding ways to scrap. I just, obviously offensively, they're going to have problems. It's Van Vliet, and OG was out tonight. That hurts them offensively because he's really one of their most important offensive players. And Lowry is on the other side of his, he's 34 now or something like that. Like he's obviously taking a back seat to Van Vliet on this team. And, they're still just figuring that out. I think they're going to make the playoffs, though. I think ultimately, I think they're going to be ahead of Atlanta, ahead of Cleveland. Like, I think they can get into that top 6 zone where they would need to be to avoid the play-in. I think ultimately that's where they will end up.
The Knicks have started to come back down to earth a little bit too.
Yes, I mean they had that nice win against the Warriors, but yes, they are coming back to earth. And I mean, I just think also their lack of offensive like firepower, like they play really hard defense. I just think a lot of times in these games they just run out of gas because they're not finding enough Austin Rivers magic late, or Randall isn't able. Like, I mean, Randall also had some tough matchups, like playing against Utah. He's not going to be able to finish around the rim against Rudy the same way that he is against other guys. And, I think they're going to be in the mix. I think Atlanta is going to be there. I think Cleveland has frankly shown that they're going to be there. And I think
we've seen enough of Cleveland that I actually think they're like legit good now.
Yeah. Like they're a solid team. Like Sexton is going to keep them in games. They're a really solid defensive team, which I don't think anybody expected, but JB Bickerstaff has done a really nice job of coaching them. And, all their big
early coach of the year candidate,
probably. I think so. And they've, I mean, all their big men, honestly, from Drummond, JaVale, Jared Allen, Larry Nance, all those guys have played really well. Like every single one of them. Like they have really they've had like a really, really good front court and look to have just like, it doesn't even matter that Tristan Thompson left. Like they're thriving.
Well, Andre Drummond's a future Hall of Famer, so I'm not surprised he's playing well. Speaking of like coach of the year candidates that are kind of under the radar, Memphis is quietly 8th in the West right now. They survived that stretch without Ja. They've been really good defensively.
Yeah.
I think Taylor Jenkins might have to be in the mix there if they keep this up.
Yeah. I mean,
and I know they've had like some games that they've missed lately because of COVID, but like they're in the mix.
No, they absolutely are. And I think a lot of people peg them, and in myself personally, I peg them for like what they call a consolidation year, where they're going to figure out like who really are our guys. And they were maybe going to take a step back and not be as competitive in the West. And they've won 5 straight, and they've been a scrappy team. And Ja is that dude. Like he is getting better. He is getting seemingly better at taking over games single-handedly, and that is huge for them because obviously they figured out that he was their franchise guy last year, but to see that he's taking a leap and it seems like the rest of the team is taking a step with him, that again, they're more ahead of schedule than I think they anticipated because of how good Ja is already. And obviously, they just play really hard, and they have a lot of talent on their team. They like the amount of guys that they have, even with Ja out, that they can just throw out there and are tough, like Melton and Grayson Allen and Brooks and, all these guys that are just, play hard, and Valanciunas when he's healthy is a load for everybody. Like they just have a lot of guys that can do, and Brandon Clark as well. Like they just have a lot of really solid players that I can trust.
Tillman, even the rookie.
Yes, Xavier Tillman. I mean, he's again, talk about a load. I mean, that's a guy who's like he's a positional, can go in a lot of different directions. He can kind of play small ball center. He can rebound. He's long. He's got those long arms with a short frame. Like, they just have a lot of those guys, and they're going to be, again, I mean, the West is so deep right now. You look at it right now, and the Pelicans are way down there, and I think the Minnesota is really the only truly, really, really, really bad team. But, Phoenix is slipping now with Booker out. Dallas has been bad. We talked about that already. Now you have Houston.
Oklahoma City's a little bit scrappy.
Yeah. Yeah, they're scrappy. I mean, they beat Portland. They beat Phoenix tonight. And obviously,
even though Phoenix didn't have Booker and Portland didn't have CJ or Nurk, like, they still, like, they've got guys. Shea is great. Lou Dort is awesome. Mike Muscala hit a bunch of threes.
Darius Baisley is really good. And, he's a really good defense. I think he's just really intriguing defensive player. This kid, Theo Maledon, has been hitting some big shots for the Thunder as well. He hit some big shots against Phoenix tonight in the fourth quarter. I caught the end of that game. And then you have teams like, San Antonio, who just keep stacking up wins that are, they held off Boston tonight with Tatum in the lineup.
Tatum's looked pretty good since he came back from having COVID.
Yeah, props to him. It's good to be 19.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gosh, who else has like some pretty, shout out to the Indiana Pacers, man. They have
Bjork, baby.
I mean, Bjork, and also what they did for Caris LeVert in getting him the surgery and trading for him, and they found a tumor, basically.
Yeah.
It sounded like, and they removed it, and they expect him to make a full recovery. And
we talked about this when the James Harden trade happened, but James Harden demanding a trade saved Caris LeVert's life, because they only found this thing because he had to get his physical before he got traded.
Yeah, no, just like a miracle, literally, that James Harden asked for a trade, and it ended up saving Caris LeVert's life. So that's incredible. And yeah, they're also just a really solid team, 11-7.
Even with this Miles Turner injury.
Yeah, I mean, Sabonis is really good. Also, they dodged a bullet there. No structural damage on Sabonis's knee. They checked it out with an MRI, and they get the win tonight against Charlotte. And they're just a really solid team. Again, they're deep. Bjork has been great. Again, a Coach of the Year candidate. I think Bjork is definitely on the short list of guys that you got to put there. And another team that I think, I mean, there's a lot of guys right now. I mean, the Jazz, they win again, 10 in a row. Quinn Snyder obviously is going to get a ton of love if the Jazz keep doing this, because this is the Jazz team that I think last year a lot of people were hyping up. This was like that. This was going to be the team that could challenge the two LA teams. Was the hype last season, and they obviously needed a bench. The Jordan Clarkson thing has been amazing, and
probably sixth man of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd have to put him there. He just gives them an energy, and I mean, Woj was talking about the other day that like that, that trade also just really like changed their locker room, and it like changed like the vibes of the team. And, maybe it's something like that, like having a guy like Clarkson that helps like get through the Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell thing, helps them get through that Mike Conley rough patch. And it seems like now everything's hitting on all cylinders, and 10 in a row. Now they are number one in the West because the Lakers lost tonight. So, I mean, the vibes for the Jazz could not be any better. And I know
I have an incredible stat for you.
Yeah. Okay. Drop it.
This is from Tim McMahon tonight. The Jazz have trailed in fourth quarters for a total of 57 seconds during their 10-game winning streak.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
That's a wild stat. Yeah. I mean, they've been... Yeah.
We are, unfortunately, you hate to see it, but we're respecting the Jazz.
We are respecting the Jazz. And it has to be said again, they have been fantastic. And I didn't think they were going to be like this, but having basically the same team from the bubble and then just bringing back Bogdanović,
Conley looks awesome so far.
Yeah, and they just have
like we thought he was washed like last season and then like going into the bubble, but he's been great.
I mean, they realistically have at any given time they can have 5 different guys on the floor that can score, and Gobert has really channeled his ability as a lob threat and is just a really good screener and just causes so many problems for the other team with his offense. And I know we like to make fun of the screen assist thing, but it's like it is real when all the guys on the team can shoot and score, which the Jazz...
it's a real stat. It's just only ever used as an instrument for Jazz respect.
Yeah, but in this case, when everybody on the team is a really good shooter, then it's like, whoa, like, oh, you have this guy diving to the rim and you have to pay attention to it because it might be 2 points. And if everyone sucks in, you're going to leave a shooter open. And most of these guys that are playing for Utah can shoot it. And I mean, they've been special. I mean, they really have. And I mean, is it that crazy to talk about them being better than the Clippers? I mean, maybe not the Lakers.
No, I don't think it is.
Like, I don't think they're better than the Lakers, but I definitely think there's a realistic conversation to be had that they're better than the Clippers. I mean, the Clippers have been great, but there are still, I think, some things about them that you might not ultimately trust in the clutch. And not to say that the Jazz don't have their own skeletons from, blowing a 3-1 lead last season, but I think that they're easily on the same level right now. And another team that we have to shout out that started poorly and we dragged them for it is Denver.
Yeah,
they're 11-7 now. They got Michael Porter Jr. back after he got COVID again.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, man. I mean, I think we have to listen to David Guetta on this one. Get the vaccine. I think that's some advice that the Porter family should heed. Mm-hmm. Given what we know about their views on this stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, maybe I think he should get the vaccine, but
along with other players.
Yes, definitely. I think there's a lot of different other players that maybe would be resistant to getting the vaccine, but they should get the vaccine.
Right, but I think the players are going to be getting it soon.
Yes, because, well, that's something that we clearly have been talking about.
We need to talk about the All-Star game.
Oh, my God.
Because they're going to do an All-Star game, and...
Well, okay, they are talking about doing... They've leaked it to Woj, and I think that was...
Well, they sent out a press release today where they talked about the All-Star, like how they're going to do the All-Star voting. Like, because even if they don't actually end up doing a game, they are still going to name the 12 All-Stars or whatever from each conference.
Yes.
So the players can say I was an All-Star this year, even if whether or not they play a game, they're going to name the All-Stars, and the voting is going to be the same as it was. But in the press release, and I realize, I have to kind of, it's kind of like the Simpsons where Bart gets famous for saying, I didn't do it. And then he has to go on the TV shows to say the line. So I have to say the line. I did get the email from the league about this. And in the press release, it said discussions about a potential All-Star game are ongoing. So they have officially, not just leaking it to Woj, they have officially put it on the record that they are talking about doing an All-Star game.
That is so insane to me. And again, I think the only way that can happen is if literally everyone in the league gets vaccinated. And even then, I don't know.
It's such a bad idea because it's not even just that, you're flying people in from all over the country to play in an exhibition game. It's that the players that you're flying in are going to be like the 20 or 25 or however many best players in the league. Mm-hmm. You're going to have like LeBron and Joel Embiid and Giannis and Luka and Dame and Anthony Davis
and Jokic and all these guys.
Yeah. Like, Kawhi, Paul, like you're going to have like the 20 or 25 best guys in the league. If one of them gets it at some point in the travel, you're looking at a situation where all of the league's top players are potentially having to be quarantined, and then that's just going to be a rough couple of weeks for, even if they don't, even if they're able to play these games, you're going to have like a whole stretch of games where like half the teams in the league don't have their best player, and like the player that drives the TV ratings and the guys that like people want to watch, and like I get that like everything is they need to make some of this TV money, and I'm sure like they'll have a good deal with TNT for like a presentation of it. The other thing I don't like about it is that in the Woj leak, they were talking about how they're potentially going to do it on an HBCU campus to raise money for HBCUs. And that just, to me, is another thing on the continuum of we want to get our players vaccinated as a PSA to the public so that the public can know that the vaccine is safe. Or, Joe Lacob talking about how we want to do rapid testing and have 50% capacity at the Chase Center because we want to set an example for everybody else on how we can reopen safely and be altruistic. Or Adam Silver back in like May or June talking about how we want to return because we have a moral duty to bring people together through sports. Like, they could just write if it's really about, raising money for these HBCUs, they could just write them a check and not hold a super spreader event on one of their campuses. But they're trying to get this money, and it's fine that they're trying to get the money because that's what they exist to do. I just kind of wish they would be honest about what they're doing and not try to spin it as we're doing something for the greater good.
Well, they could, the way that they're selling it is like, and again, they don't have to do this. And I mean, you look at the NFL, like the NFL is not like, they're not leading with like, look at the good we're doing. They're just like,
well, they are trying to do that a little bit with we're going to have 22,000 people in the stands at the Super Bowl, but 7,500 of them are going to be healthcare workers who have gotten the vaccine. Never mind that the other 14,000 of them, who knows, you're on your own. Best of luck.
So just like the Super Bowl, the All-Star Weekend is going to be similar bullshit. And it's like, I think I saw Michael Lee from the Washington Post, longtime NBA writer, write about that, or say just write a check. If you're trying to raise money for HBCUs, like you could be literally just
the difference is that the Super Bowl is the Super Bowl, and it's like the most important thing in the NFL. Like nobody's like this last year in Chicago when they had the Elam ending, that was the first good All-Star game in like 20 years. We don't need an All-Star game. Nobody's like the cool stuff of the All-Star weekend is like the dunk contest and the Rising Stars game and the 3-point contest and like all the ancillary stuff. Nobody actually wants to watch the All-Star game. Like, and they're not going to do the other events. They're just going to do one game. I don't believe that they're going to do like the dunk contest and do all the stuff because you can't really justify having the whole league in one city for an entire weekend because of the pandemic. So like they'll survive without an All-Star game this year. That just feels like it was already kind of like a lot of hubris to even like start the season when they did instead of waiting until March and, delaying the calendar or whatever. But this is like even for by those standards, this is just like you can at least like when they, even though like the safe thing to do would have been to wait until March to start the season, you can at least rationalize that as they want to get the season done in time to get next season started on time. Like there are actual reasons for that, like why it makes sense from a calendar standpoint.
Well, yeah,
but there's no reason. Like there's no level on which the All-Star game is a good idea.
Well, and you're telling me that like, okay, let's be real. Like, I don't think the players want to do this. Like, I mean, I think the players that do want to do this are the players that will not be participating in All-Star Weekend that could go. They'll have, be but I think most of the players would probably rather have like a 2-week off period.
It's not going to be 2 weeks, by the way. It's going to be, according to the current official list of NBA key dates, which obviously is subject to change because they're all kind of just making it up as it goes along. But
they just changed like 3 games today.
Yeah, the official calendar as it exists right now on the record is that March 5th through 10th is the All-Star break. So it's the same length of All-Star break as a normal season would have an All-Star break.
Okay. Well, there you go.
So it's not even like extra time off.
So there you go. So I don't know why the players would do it other than the revenue standpoint. And
I'm sure Michelle has talked to them about like this is how much revenue it'll be. This is how much money we'll have to give up if we don't do it. And I mean, just like everything else, some players didn't want to do the bubble, but then they saw how much money everybody would lose if they didn't do it. I'm sure there are things like, because I know TNT has all the All-Star stuff, so I'm sure there's like some clause in their contract with Turner that like if you don't have the All-Star game, they have to give this percentage, this amount of money back, and then
and the thing that they report that Woj reported is that they're looking at Atlanta, and that is something where like TNT could just like they probably already have cameras in the arena in Atlanta that the Hawks play that they can just turn on with remote controls and not have to hire extra cameramen. And I guess they could theoretically have a game with no fans.
Well, you know what? If you're going to do
they might just do what the NBA, they might just do what the NFL does. And they're like, well, we're going to invite, 7,500 vaccinated healthcare workers or some shit like that.
Vaccinated healthcare workers and HBCU students, because they're using HBCUs as as like a PR shield for this.
So the
thing.
HBCU students are just going to be on their own as far as
I guess so. Maybe I mean if they're
like that's not very good.
If you're going to vaccinate a bunch of college students beforehand, then cool. But like, I don't know if they're going to do that. I will say that I have been.
Hey, if the NBA wants to foot the bill for thousands of HBCU students to get the vaccine, then they should do that. But like,
that's a good idea. And honestly, doing that would be a way to massage the optics of all the players getting the vaccine. I will say though that I have been in the Turner studios and the TNT inside the NBA studio and the NBA TV Game Time studios are like right next to each other. So I've seen both of them because back, 7 or 8 years ago, I did a story behind the scenes of Inside. So I spent a whole day in that studio. But the studio for NBA TV, where they film like Game Time and, all the NBA TV studio shows, has a regulation court on the thing. Because you know how like sometimes like the ex-players who are on those shows will come out and like demonstrate a play. They have a full-size regulation court with like the painting, like of the painted area and stuff on the floor of that studio with like regulation hardwood and everything. So they could just, if they really wanted to do something unique with it, they could literally just have the game be played at the Turner Studios and not even like try to make it like an arena thing and make it a more intimate thing. I could see that. I still don't think it's a good idea.
I don't think that's a good, I mean, if that was the case, it would basically just be like another regular season game if there's like no other events. But again, I just don't see. I mean, like what would like addressed like a really like like a I don't know how the way to describe it, like a limited All-Star weekend even look like. Like I don't know, like are they gonna not? Are they not? They're just not gonna have Saturday night. They're not gonna have the 3-point shootout.
Can't imagine they would.
Like, but okay, but if you convince everybody that it's okay to have the game and you're going to have the game, they're going to find a way to do the dunk contest, which is not as, there's no contact in the dunk contest. There's no contact in the 3-point shootout. Like if anything, All-Star.
But it's just more people that you have to fly in though.
I understand that. But if all the players are vaccinated again,
keep your third eye open. David Guetta performing at halftime of the All-Star game.
I'm just saying, if all the players are vaccinated, then it becomes very easy all of a sudden for them to do an entire All-Star weekend of events without fans. And then they could theoretically have that whole weekend for sale to, get the celebrity game or whatever, or
are they gonna like vaccinate Kevin Hart and like the Property Brothers to just fly them in for their soul? Like, is that how they're gonna do this? Like Ronnie 2K is gonna be
Arnie Duncan is gonna be back and he's gonna deliver the vaccine on behalf of the Biden administration.
Maybe this is the year that Obama finally plays in it, because that as an ex-president, he's already gotten it. So maybe this is the year that we finally get Obama in the celebrity game.
Yeah, maybe this is it.
The last time I traveled for anything before COVID hit was the All-Star game in Chicago. And that was the first time I'd been to the All-Star game in a few years. I went to the first New Orleans one in 2014. I went to the New York one. I went to the Toronto one. And then I skipped the last few years, but I went to the Chicago one. And I had the best All-Star weekend I've ever had, and I did not go to the United Center once. Like, the whole point of All-Star weekend, at least for me, is the networking and, like, the ancillary events, like the Basketball Without Borders stuff, where, like, a lot of the executives are. You could look at, like, these young international prospects and just kind of, the tech summit where like, the league gives this presentation on, like, all the different technology and, like, stuff they're investing in and all this different, proprietary stuff. Like, that stuff for the All-Star weekend is what makes it worthwhile to me. Like, I like the All-Star game itself. I do not like, literally, the night of the All-Star game, like the Blazers sent a bunch of their like social and video people there. And then Dame, I think, had just gotten injured beforehand, so he wasn't even playing in the game. And so the homie Tristan, who's one of their video guys who I went to high school with, he and I went and got pizza and just like kicked it that night instead of going to the All-Star game. And I like a lot of these players, like I'm sure there are some guys who would like to play in the All-Star game, but I don't think that like most players who go to whatever city the All-Star game is in, their main focus is the All-Star game.
No, it's just like when we go to Summer League. It's not like we're not going to Summer League to explicitly watch, these guys trying to make a training camp roster. Like, we're going to go hang out with people and talk to people that otherwise we would not see, or we otherwise wouldn't have this time or whatever. And it's like, you just get to do fun stuff, and it's just an atmosphere. It's an energy that you feel at All-Star Weekend. Like, again, yeah, like I agree with you. Like, the last All-Star Weekend I went to was LA in 2018, and I did one thing at LA Live, and that was it. And I had a blast. Like, it was like one thing at LA Live that I did some interviews at, and the rest of the time I just had a good time and just like chilled out and hung out, because it's just like there's a lot of things happening. And like, even the same thing when we went to New York, like or when I went to New York.
That was the only one that you and I both went to, right?
Yeah, it's the only one that you and I both went to. And it's like, I had a great time in New York. Like, I went out with my friends in Brooklyn. I went to the dunk contest. Like, but like, honestly,
Kelsey tried to get you into the Jordan party that Prince performed.
We didn't go.
She couldn't, right?
Well, no, we just didn't go. I ended up deciding to, like, we both just decided to, like, it was either like go to the Prince party and like hang out with like,
well, you didn't know that Prince was going to be performing.
There were rumors that someone famous was going to be performing.
If you had known that Prince was going to be performing and then you still decided not to go, I don't know if I would be still able to do this podcast with you.
No, I didn't know that Prince was performing, but it was like, go to the Jordan party and be outside and like try to, and like go in, and like you still have to wait outside for them to let you in, even if we were on a list. And then also or like go hang out with my friends that I don't see all the time that live in New York, and like have a great time with them. And I don't regret, even though even knowing now that Prince was there, like, it was fun going out that night. We went out to Kinfolk in Brooklyn. It was just fun. I don't know.
And with the whole thing being that not only because like I've seen, like, I've been on the air on flights to All-Star with players before. Like,
yeah,
there were like not even like players who were in the All-Star game or even in any of the events. Like when I was covering the Bulls, I was on a flight to New York, or it was either New York or Toronto, whichever one of those it was. But like, I was on a flight and Tony Snell was on my flight. Like Tony Snell is obviously not participating in any of the events, but like NBA players just go there to kick it because that's where it is. And like for this
I flew on the same flight as Neil Olshey to the New York All-Star Weekend. Like,
yeah, but so like, even like the whole point, even like for players, the All-Star game or the All-Star Weekend is all of this other stuff. And you kind of don't want, if you're bringing players in for All-Star Weekend during COVID, you kind of don't want them going anywhere. You want it to be like a normal NBA game this season, where you want them to go to the arena, play the game, and then just stay in their hotel room otherwise. You don't want there to be all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. You don't, but I do see somehow that's going to happen. Of course it's going to happen. I mean, they wouldn't leak it. They wouldn't let Woj leak it unless it was going to happen. Yeah. Let's see. In Miami, bad vibes. I think that is definitely something that we have to continue talking about, because even though Jimmy Butler is not with the team and everyone thinks it's COVID, he's still not there. They're not very good. They keep losing games. And at a certain point, I know that Toronto's only a half game ahead of them, but Toronto has at least shown at times that they can play well for stretches, whereas Miami, I don't feel like has had a stretch this season where they have played well at all.
Bam's been awesome. Other than that, there's not a whole lot going on there.
Yeah, I mean, I just, like, they really need Jimmy Butler, and it's like all the Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson stuff is really good, and
those guys aren't ready yet.
No, those guys can't. They're not carrying the team. Like, yes, they were having big games, but like, part of the reason they were able to carry the team is the fact that the other teams had to pay so much attention to Jimmy Butler to slow him down. So these guys get other opportunities where the defense hasn't loaded up on them. And I just think that when the defense is loading up on you, that gives, it just makes everything harder. And yeah, Bam has been great. Bam's putting up career numbers like left and right and hitting 3-pointers like, nobody's business. Like, it looks like it's really a part of his game. But I just think also too, it's like when you make the NBA finals, you're getting everyone's best shot. Like last year, like, it's just like, they play really hard and they have Jimmy Butler and they scrap. But this year they're coming off of being the Eastern Conference champion. And like that, a different level, I think, of attention, and I think is partially part of why they have struggled this year is that they're getting more teams' best shots. They're not sneaking up on anybody and not just getting by on, everyone knows you have to play hard against the Miami Heat and more than that to win because they were really great last year.
I think the only other team that's really like a vibe check is like necessary, and it's kind of the opposite of this Miami team where, it's the team that they played against in the finals and they're just rolling. I think obviously there's a lot of the season left to go and people are talking about, Embiid, they're talking about Jokic, they're talking about whoever. LeBron is going to win MVP. Like I have just in the last week, I have started to see, he had that big game against the Bucks the other night, and even in this loss to Philly tonight, he was incredible. Like I have just starting to see every time he has a big game, all of the national writers and all the people who have MVP votes are starting to talk on Twitter about, is this the year LeBron is going to win MVP in the latter? Like it's going to happen. It's going to happen. I said back in September after he had the comments about Giannis, I wrote the column, I said it on here, that if voters could at all justify giving it to him, they were going to give it to him if he had anything close to the season he had last year, and he is. He's having another LeBron season.
I mean, Giannis even did more narrative work for him before the season even started when he gave an interview to a Greek TV station saying it doesn't matter that I'm the back-to-back MVP. Right. LeBron James is still the best player in the world.
Right.
And he had 34 points tonight. They were like, he had, I think 21 in the first half, and was the only reason they weren't down 20 at halftime in this game. And he was amazing again tonight. And, he's had back-to-back 30-point games. Now he had that 46-point performance against Cleveland. That was incredible. And the moment that he had with that Cavs executive getting up off the bench and clapping up and basically sparking him on, his best quarter of the season it's one of those moments that Embiid and Jokic and, some of these other guys that are competing for the MVPs just simply don't have. Like LeBron has multiple of these now where he's had like maybe some of like the 5 best moments of the NBA season so far. And it's like, that stuff is going to add up. And I think like you said, it's starting to take shape.
The one question, and I mean, I had been saying for, months that LeBron's going to win MVP this year. The pushback that I got that I think was fair to have at the time, before the season started, was LeBron's going to take too many games off. He's going to load manage. He has not missed a game yet this season. And maybe as it gets close to the playoffs and if the Lakers clinch the 1 seed, he'll start taking some games off. But he's been playing every game, and he's been he didn't have a very good game against the Bulls the other night, but other than that, he's having another LeBron season. And we've seen that, I think a lot of voters last year really wanted to give it to LeBron. It's just that Giannis was so undeniable that there was no way that Giannis wasn't going to win that award. The Bucks had the best record in the league, blah, blah, blah. But a lot of people you could see afterwards were talking about how maybe LeBron was robbed, and then once LeBron said what he said about, he was pissed off that Giannis got so many more votes than he did, that it's pretty obvious what's happening. And as long as the Lakers keep winning and LeBron keeps putting up the numbers that he is putting up, and I see no reason, unless he gets injured, I don't see no reason why either of those things aren't going to happen. I think this is going to be the year that he wins the late career MVP and sets the record for the longest gap between first and last MVP of his career, because his first one came in 2009. And so having MVPs 12 years apart, that's something that Jordan can't say. That's something that, even the previous record was Kareem, who won it in 71, and then he won his first one in 71 and he won his last one in 1980. This is if you want to cement LeBron's, GOAT case from the longevity standpoint, this MVP this late in his career would be the thing that does it.
I mean, this is number 5 if he gets it, and that would tie him with MJ.
It's only Kareem is the only guy that has more.
Kareem is the only guy that has 6, and then MJ, and I believe it's who else is it that has? I think MJ is the only one actually that has 5.
Bill Russell has 5.
Oh, Bill Russell has 5. Okay, so
and then and then like Larry Bird and Magic and Wilt all have 4, I think.
Mm-hmm. So he would get his 5th and join that elite company with Michael and Bill Russell. And you look at his numbers, and Anthony Davis. Obviously, you look at his numbers; they look good on paper, but he's actually not having like a really great season. Like he's struggling from the free throw line. He's leaving a lot of points out there. He hasn't been as good, I think, on defense as you'd like him to be. And LeBron has been just as good on a per minute basis than he's ever been, and he's averaging almost as many points as Kawhi is, and he's playing 2 fewer minutes a game, and he is scoring about the same amount of points as Jokic is, and Jokic is playing 35 minutes a game. And it's like, you see all that, and Jokic has been great, and his numbers are, he's averaging almost a triple-double. But I do think the triple-double thing I don't think it's going to just like carry the day as it used to. Like, it just, even though he's doing it efficiently, but like LeBron shooting the 3 better than Jokic. He's shooting the 3 better than Embiid. Like his volume is like, him and KD are basically shooting the same amount from 3 right now. And like for LeBron to be doing that right now, on top of all the other things that he does well and probably does better than KD, like, you have to put him number 1 right now as the MVP, even though, Embiid had a nice moment tonight. But I think LeBron was clearly in a showdown against Embiid, was clearly the best player on the court tonight.
Before we close out, unfortunately we've had to do a lot of shout outs to various families lately. We talked about Hank Aaron, we talked about Larry King on the last one.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about other guys at various points. Sekou Smith yesterday, we heard about a week ago that he was in the hospital and he had COVID, and then last night we found out that he didn't make it. And so, I mean, Did you ever meet him, or did you know him at all?
Yeah,
or?
I think I said hi to him, when he was in Portland. I think once he was in Portland when I was on the beat at the Columbian, and
he was here. Well, he was here for I think the most extensively I ever talked to him. Obviously, like I've like casually known him for years, just seeing him at different like summer league or whatever. He was here last year, or not last year, but the 2019 Denver. He was here for the Denver series. Like
that's right.
NBA.com sent him to the Denver series, and he and I talked for like 20 minutes in the media room before one of those games. Like we exchanged numbers, and he kept saying, "Man, like I got to get you on the Hang Time podcast. I got to get you." In which it never ended up happening. Obviously, like he had way more important people than me to get on that podcast. I mean, that would have been like a career highlight for me if that had ever happened. But like, the first time I met Sekou, and I tweeted a little bit about this last night, but I mentioned earlier that I went to Atlanta back early on in my career when I was at USA Today to do a story on Inside the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't in the NBA TV studio that night, but the night before I was supposed to go into Turner, the Hawks had a home game, and so I just went and covered it, and I went there with Robbie Calland, who is both of our homie and was working for the Hawks at the time as their website writer. And Robbie introduced me to Sekou, and I was like 23 or 24 or whatever, and I was like barely out of college, and I introduced myself to Sekou, and he's like, "Oh, Sean, yeah, I know who you are. Your stuff's good." And I was like, I mean, I don't know if he actually knew who I was. He could have just been saying that to be nice, but for me to be like just getting my career started and have like an OG of that like caliber, who's somebody that I had like respected for such a long time, say that to me, that was like such a huge thing. And every time I'd be lying if I said that we were close, but he was just the kind of guy, like I would see him, I'd see him at the All-Star game. I'd see him like occasionally he'd be covering a playoff game in Chicago, or, I'd see him at Summer League. I'd see him at the finals. I'd see him wherever, it was always like you see him, you say what's up, and you talk for a few minutes. Like that's the extent to which I knew him. But you saw all of this stuff on social media last night, both from people who only knew him casually like I did, and from people who were really close to him, like my buddy Vinny Goodwill and, Chris Haynes and some of these other folks. John Krasinski from The Athletic used to work with him in Indy, and, those guys all knew him a lot better than I did, but everybody said the exact same thing about him. Like, it was just uniform across the board that, like, he's just very few people in our industry have a 100% approval rating among like media colleagues, because this is a very petty industry and a lot of people are just kind of, hold grudges and it's very cliquey and all this stuff. I cannot imagine a scenario where anybody knew Sekou and didn't like him. Like, he's just, there are people in this business, and you and I both know kind of who some of these people are, but there are people in this business who are like as big time as he was and act big time and will only give you the time of day if you're important enough for them to give the time of day to. Sekou was not like that at all. He was the kind of guy who was just like nice to everybody and was cool to everybody, even if you were like, whether you were like another big time media person or you were a team exec or somebody like me who was like, when I met him, was just starting out, or just like some, intern or like social media intern or whatever. Like Sekou was just like, I don't know. He's just, Chris Herring is like this. Jeff Zolgin is like this too. Like, there are Golliver's like this. Like, there are some guys who are just cool to everybody who like in the business who like tries to talk to them, even if they're like not as important as they are. And Sekou was, definitely one of those guys. And the fact that like, I mean, he was 48. He had a wife and 3 kids. And like, I have friends. I have several friends who have had COVID. Thankfully, all of them have, made it through it and survived it and are okay now. But Sekou is the first person that even though I didn't know him well, he was the first person that I could say that I knew personally that actually was one of the 400,000 that have died from it. And I don't know the situation. I don't know where he got it or when he got it or how he got it or what. But I will say that this happening has made me feel okay about my decision to stop going to games this season until I've gotten the vaccine. So that's just kind of all I have to say really about Sekou. I don't know if you have anything you want to add.
No, I mean, I don't have anything to add there. I mean, well, yes, I met him in passing a couple of times at games. He's always very nice, always very courteous. Again, for a guy who was on TV, who didn't have to be and could have been like, oh, this is my spot or whatever, and like bullied you out of the way or whatever. He didn't ever do that. And so that was, he was a guy that everyone liked. I think Woj said, he was the best of us in the industry.
That's a phrase that I saw a lot of last night.
Yeah.
Like, I think Beck tweeted the same thing about him. Like, and obviously all these guys like know him a lot better than I did, but
well, yeah, I mean, it speaks to, again, how he made people feel and how many people liked him. I mean, I saw Chris Paul tweet about him. I saw Klay Thompson tweet about him. I saw, the NBA, Adam Silver released a statement about him. I mean, it was
a bunch of teams had moments of silence tonight. I saw, like, I know the Hawks obviously released a statement because he was based in Atlanta and he had covered the Hawks for a long time. But like, I saw that the Pelicans like put a picture of him on a seat on their media section with like had like a credential reserved for him. And I think a couple of other teams I saw on their social media that did that.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah. So, I saw that too. And yeah, I mean, it was devastating news to hear, and it was a shock. I mean, I didn't even remember that he had been diagnosed with COVID, and
I only knew about it because I guess Stan Van Gundy said it at a pregame media availability that I saw somebody tweet about, where like a week ago it was like, hey, like
he like said something like.
Yeah, like Stan Van Gundy opens his media. It was like Andy Lopez or one of the New Orleans guys that tweeted, like, Stan Van Gundy opens his remarks by sending well wishes to Sekou Smith, who's dealing with COVID. And so then I slid in his DMs and was just like, hey, man, thinking about you, quick, hope you recover. And he never responded.
Man, that sucks, dude.
Yeah, it's shout out to his family.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to his family. shout out to everyone who knew him a lot better than we did. And lost someone really close to them and someone really special. And obviously a lot of us who watched NBA TV who loved watching him and, thought we were entertained by him. And also he did a great job with the interviews, when they would have interviews in these things. And he's a longtime beat writer. He started out, he grinded it out, he didn't just show up on NBA TV, and so he was in the business for a really long time, and it's really sad, and we lost a colleague of ours, and it's just like a reminder of how fucked up this is, and this COVID thing is, and how messed up it all is, and honestly, it is one of the things that I guess it's just like you're just like, wow, like this is really fucked up, and it's like we're playing with our lives, in a large way in this country, and it's like, and the NBA is not exempt from that, and it's really sad. I have nothing more to say, but that's all I have to say about it.
Yeah, I think that's probably we're at like over an hour now. I think that's probably a good place to leave it, but. We'll be back later this week. I think, we'll have a Patreon episode for the family. If you're not on that, you should get on that at patreon.com/BullsVBlazers. It's $3 a month. You get an extra episode. We'll see if we can get the Kelsey check-in to happen. Maybe, talk about the Tiger doc, talk about, whatever else. If Kelsey has like takes on the NBA season she wants to get off.
Yeah, we just finished the Tiger doc today. We finished part 2.
We'll do that in a few days. We'll talk about it. If Kelsey has takes about anything else she wants to get off, we can provide a forum for that.
Yes.
But other than that, we will be back. Thanks for listening, and shout out to all of the families out there.
Yes, and shout out to those of us in our Patreon family as well.
Yeah.